Hey everybody, what's going on? It's week 2 in my garage, and things could get interesting. That's my tease. I'm Jason Howell, joined as always by Jeff Jarvis, my friend in AI. How you doing, Jeff?
It's the doghouse episodes. I think
Yeah.
that I don't know what Jason did wrong, but he's been sent to the garage.
Look, I don't like to talk about it, okay? Can we just not talk about it, please?
Is the dog there with you?
No, the dog is inside. One of 2 dogs are inside. The other dog got to go with my wife to her work today. Every once in a while, she brings her to work, so it's a special day for Sugar. Bronson is inside pouting because he didn't get to go. And he doesn't get to be in here with me, you know? He's relegated to his own doghouse, which is the actual house.
The whole house, yeah.
Right. I'm the one living in discomfort. I am in my garage again, and I will forewarn everyone. So just to catch you up, we have a bathroom remodel happening inside, and it's been very noisy. It's totally underway at this point. And so doing this in the garage is probably the safest bet, except for the fact that all the materials are behind me and the garage door is behind me. So and the contractors are not here yet today. I half expect, like, halfway through the show, suddenly that garage door is going to open, and there's going to be workers jumbling in to get the drywall and start hauling stuff off. So it could get really interesting. Let's just say that. And or maybe not. Maybe we just do a podcast in the garage.
And the bathroom gets delayed, which is what normally happens when you have contractors.
Oh, dude, let me tell you, it's been full of delays. It is not that awesome, but it is what it is. And someday we'll have a new bathroom. So we have that to look forward to. All right, well, let's dive in. And I think we got to start with Anthropic, who... Yeah, this is a story that changed very quickly, right?
Right after I put it up, it just reversed.
Yeah, so strange. So what happened? Well, Anthropic, of course, has been in the midst of a pretty big lawsuit with authors about copyrighted use of books that it had procured through not so legal ways, likely, BitTorrents and all that kind of stuff. Everything like that. We've talked about it many times. Well, a federal judge in the case, Judge Alsup, has weighed in because Anthropic had reached a $1.5 billion copyright settlement with the authors, supposedly, although we'll talk about that. Yes. Yeah, as a class, that's right. Judge William Alsup criticized the deal a day later. So basically, like, on one day, we got the news that Anthropic had struck this major deal, no small amount. $1.5 billion is a ton of money for this settlement. Anthropic was probably like, all right, we've announced it, our hands are clean. We can now move forward with our lives. Day later, Judge William Alsup criticizes the deal, saying it was unfinished, possibly even unfair to the authors that were part of the deal. He's seeking more details about how authors who are impacted can make their claims. He also questioned the lawyers themselves, saying they're rushing a settlement. They're likely to miss critical details in the process. And Judge Alsup has set a September 15th deadline for a final list of works to be included here. And that list totals, to my understanding, around 465,000 titles. The deal as it's set right now would pay around $3,000 per book. But I think the question is, all right, but which authors get access to that? How much, who's included versus not? And how do they make claim for that? All sorts of details that Judge Alsup says is not hammered out yet and needs to be.
So, lots and lots to talk about here. It came out that they had a settlement first, and the number, I think, surprised everybody. It was higher than we thought.
Yeah,
you could argue that it was lower, that you could say that's thousands upon thousands upon thousands of dollars for a copyright violation. Mm-hmm. But my contention has been that Anthropic was fined for buying used books for which no money went to the authors, and it was fair use and transformative in Alsup's opinion. And so that, to me, set an expectation of what the authors might get. And to me, if instead of buying used books, Anthropic had bought 400,000 new books, each author would have gotten roughly $1 or $1.50 in royalties for that. And so I thought 1.5 billion, which works out to about $3,000 per book, was really high compared to what it need be. And I thought, geez, I don't know about using their lawyers. And in fact, so my agent came to me and sent me an email that she sent to all of her clients with a link to the Anthropic copyright settlement website.
Oh, interesting.
So what the hell? Even though I think that it was all fair use, and Anthropic, you could have my books. That's fine with me. I want to be found.
But $3,000 per book wouldn't be too bad either.
Not too bad, right?
Just saying.
But there's all kinds of complications even with that. So does my agent get her cut? Does the publisher? Is the publisher do part of this? I think that's uncertain.
That's so interesting. I hadn't considered that. Yeah, that's a good question.
That's what Alsop is saying, that there are nuances to this as to who's up for the money, what the deals were, how that's determined. That's all complicated. Point one. Point two, and this is to me a bit of an irony in Alsop's complaint. In the one hand, he's saying too many lawyers. You brought lawyers in from the authors, you brought lawyers in from here and there and everywhere, and he's worried about that. But on the other hand, if this is as complicated as I just outlined, they might need more lawyers. So I think that Anthropic was trying to get through this, and I thought they offered too much. But then we had a really interesting column from MG Siegler at Spyglass,
yes,
who said that in MG's cynical view of this, what Anthropic was doing with its VC money was pulling up the ladder behind it and saying, okay, anybody else who wants to train their models, good luck, you're in for a fortune because we've just set the bar for how much it costs. You're going to be paying $3,000 a book to be able to read the book and train on it. Now, again, my view on this is that, but, if you buy the book at retail, buy the paperback, not the hardback, and do what Anthropic did with the other books they had, you're not paying $3,000 a book. You're paying $20 a book.
Right, exactly. That was kind of what I was thinking.
That's still a lot. So it's really complicated here. And I think what's the final note, which is a lie, I always have one more note, is that I think the courts obviously have not decided the law under all of this, but companies want to keep going. And I think Anthropic wants to keep going without an albatross around their neck, with a whole bunch of lawyers hanging on, waiting for their money, and the authors. Now, I read a piece in The Guardian from Australian authors who were, screaming the way I would expect from my friends at The Guardian, they're stealing our books and how dare they, and this is evil and awful. And you've heard my argument very often that I believe it's fair use and transformative. If it's writers, they can read and learn from others, so should the machine. But the other thing that strikes me, Jason, is I had a conversation with one of my old colleagues in the newspaper business, and 2 weeks ago. And on the one hand, he was saying, AI is coming along. We're going to lose search. We're going to lose social. And the next breath, he said, and we're cutting off all the AI companies. And I thought, well, then you're not going to get discovered, mate. And I would say the same thing to all these authors. If you want your thoughts, your research, your work, your voice to be found by people, then you're going to have to let them scrape you. And I think in the long, long run, what we're going to find is it's going to end up being voluntary. See, I lied. It was not my last point. Now I'll get to the last point. When Germany passed, and I love saying this word, the Leistungsschutzrecht.
Yes,
in
I
Germany,
love hearing that word.
The ancillary copyright. If you look up, folks, there's a musical version of that was put out by one of our fans.
That's right, I forgot about
reggae
that.
version of Leistungsschutzrecht. So that was the ancillary copyright that said that you had to have permission from the publisher to scrape them and link to them. This is the old search days. And Google said, we're not paying you, so if you don't want us to just put up robust text, we won't scrape you, we won't search you. All the publishers, except one in Germany, said, they gave them permission because they wanted to be scraped. They wanted to be found, right? Axel Springer said, no, nine, you must pay us. Google said no. 10 days later, Axel Springer said, uncle, and gave him permission. So I think in the long run, we're going to find a similar thing happening. If, in fact, AI becomes the path of discovery to both ideas and authors and publications, then they're going to have to want to be there. So the current entitlement talk about how dare you steal my thought, one of 500,000 books, and I only have a few readers anyway, I think goes away. But in the meantime, Anthropic was willing to pay approximately $3,000 per book, which is more than some of these authors made in total.
In total. Yeah, that's what I was wondering. Is like, oh boy.
I mean, my advance from Bloomsbury as an academic book is $1,000. That's it.
And then whatever the book sells,
then you get
like a
royalties on top
whatever,
of that, right? But a lot of these books, I've heard the numbers before about how many books sell over $100,000, and there's very few of them.
Yeah.
So most of these authors would make more from the settlement than they've made themselves, and something's wrong with that picture.
Yeah.
Now I'm done.
Interesting. Yeah, the value of being represented versus the strict value or the perceived value of, what they're missing or what they're losing out on if their work is integrated. That's certainly something that I think needs some clarity or some better understanding, it sounds like, from authors. The immediate knee jerk is, don't use my stuff without my permission. Don't use my stuff without compensating me to some degree. And if neither of those things is true, then you can't have it.
Well, no, I don't think
the
that's
future. I mean, is that incorrect?
Because no, if you buy my used book, I didn't get permission.
Yeah, right. Totally.
So if you acquire it legally, even if I don't make money from it, you can use it. If you acquire it illegally, I can go after you for a violation.
So I guess where my head is, not being an author, obviously and admittedly, but my head is like, okay, so then what do they lose by having their content involved here? If the references are potentially directing back to their content, or potentially not. I think a lot of authors are concerned that they're unique, and I will put that in air quotes, not to say that they don't have unique thoughts, but as you've pointed out many times on this show,
everything is derivative.
Everything is derivative. There is no true unique thought, or very, very rarely is there. But if that's the case,
Einstein. I'll say Einstein. Okay,
sure,
but yeah,
sure. At this point, though, it's hard to find an example, and like what are you missing other than the knee jerk? Like, don't use my stuff without my permission.
Jason, that's the right question, and I haven't heard that question asked enough. Another way to phrase it is, what's the harm? Mm-hmm. What was the actual harm to these authors? And I think it's nothing.
But there's a perceived harm, and part of that is just because it's a new technology. There's the scale issue that people like to jump to, like, oh, but it does it so rapidly and so at scale, and all these things that is really, really bound by a understanding or lack thereof of the technology and how it works, and a fear of change, right? A fear of the fact that things just do change, and we're in the middle of that.
Okay, I think the perceived harm is more emotional.
Yes,
right? This is my
tied to fear,
blood and sweat and tears, and you took it and benefit from it. You're a big evil company and a technology company, and how dare you? Mm-hmm. And so it's really kind of a slap you with the glove and let us duel to the death, right? It's really that kind of thing. So to go back to that era, let's go back to the origins of copyright. 1710, Statute of Anne, England. After the licensing rules have been taken off in England because Parliament wasn't in session and it was a whole mess and they killed a king and all kinds of other things I won't get into. The publishers were in a tizzy because there was all of a sudden a whole bunch of new publishing, and there was competition, and they didn't know what to do with it. And they went after Parliament to try to get that changed. And what they got kind of instead was copyright. And copyright was demanded not by the authors to protect themselves. It was demanded by the booksellers and publishers to create a market for creativity as a tradable asset. So that when I, as the author, sold you as the publisher the rights to my book, you could in turn sell it on to somebody else, which is often what happened. You had that right to, because I had transferred my right. I had alienated myself from my work, right? In Marxian terms. And so then what happened was that the publishers, Jason says, well, actually authors have a lifetime, not just lifetime. They have a permanent right to the product of their brow. And so since I bought that from them, Jason now owns that. And I own that forever. And it went to court in the House of Lords, and the House of Lords said, no, it's set to the then term of copyright, 14 years. So copyright was not a granting of rights. It was actually a restriction of rights, because the presumption was that the author had rights to works in perpetuity, but for the benefit of society, copyright limited that right to 14 years. Now, of course, because of Sonny Bono and Disney, copyright is extended now like centuries. It's many years past an author's death. But that's the underpinning of copyright. So when authors come along and say, oh my God, you stole my soul when you read my book, I find that as an author who wants to be read, even offensive.
Yeah, interesting. When you talk to other authors, do they, like, I'm curious what their perception or their perspective on your perspective is. Is it kind of like, are you crazy?
Yeah, they think I'm full of crap. Yeah. Because again, it's that emotional thing. But the big bad company took my work. The lesson again here is very clear. One should acquire it legally so you don't put yourself in this position of vulnerability.
Yes. Okay.
Now, Anthropic, if they had got the settlement to go through, they would have been free and clear, unlike AI companies, which now had to all face this. If they use the same databases, they're going to be in the same kind of trouble at the same kind of price, and they're delayed. So the lesson to anybody who's going to start now is use books.
Yeah.
But the other thing that occur, or use Common Crawl, use other sources out there.
Yeah.
But the other lesson is this pushes the whole world towards synthetic data, the world of AI. Because I'll make my own damn data.
Right.
Is kind of what they're saying, which means that eliminates the connections to all of this human work. We don't want that either.
That's interesting.
It's fascinating.
Another fun fact from the MG Siegler piece that I didn't find the connection is that Anthropic claims they didn't even use the data to train their in-use models. They claim no guilt in the settlement. And MG is questioning in his piece what models they did use these data sets to train, if they didn't use it to train their in-use models, and whether there might be more damaging stuff that would have been revealed in discovery had the case moved forward. Or if the case does move forward, I don't know. Could Judge Alsup decide no, we're not accepting the settlement.
Yeah.
The case needs to move forward.
And then the entire AI industry is borked.
Yeah.
Because that means it could go against them. Even though, again, the fair use and transformative on the properly acquired works is already settled in the Anthropic case. But if this goes to appeal, that could change. And it could be worse on the improperly acquired works, and it affects everybody. I wouldn't have been surprised if other AI companies paid Anthropic. They didn't do this, I don't think. But it would have been worth it for them to say, go ahead and settle.
Right.
Because it helps us all.
We'll go ahead and put some money in the kitty if that's what it needs.
Because we don't want this to advance past.
Yeah,
the decision's not perfect, but it's good enough for us. It says that if you acquire it properly, it's fair use. Hallelujah.
That's something.
They're all happy then, right? And if this gets questioned in higher courts, both appellate and God knows in the Supreme Court, the AI industry would not be a happy camper.
Yeah, who knows where it goes from there. Yeah, interesting. Well, that was a big story. Another big story, but not in the way that you might think, was yesterday Apple had its, always touted hardware event of the year, showing off the iPhone 17, new Apple Watches, new AirPods, all the usual suspects that you expect from Apple. But one thing you hardly heard if you tuned into the hour and 15-minute pre-recorded, pre-produced thing, you hardly heard any mention of AI, not even Apple Intelligence. I think one author, I think at CNN, counted 4 moments throughout the entire thing that it mentioned anything about Apple Intelligence. No mention of the word Siri. So Apple, going over here. I think what's interesting here is that it really, I think I think whether Apple is trying to wave hands and say, look over there, not over here, or whether Apple is playing a smarter long game, aka doing what Apple always does, which is, you know what, we misstepped before we announced what we did. What in the misstep is we announced things last year that didn't exist yet and that we weren't 100% certain on. We weren't able to deliver on them. That's very not Apple of us. Now what we're going to do is we're going to do what Apple normally does, which is we wait until the dust settles and then we bring out the big guns to show that we waited until things have matured, until maybe the market, the AI market and all the players have, the dust has settled between them to know who the really good where the really good models reside, so Apple can either target them as an acquisition or just use their technology. And back to the strategy of Apple playing the waiting game, which sometimes people criticize Apple because they say, well, then you're behind. But for whatever reason, Apple comes out after doing that and they are seen as the leaders, when they do it properly, when they do it the way that I think they plan to execute. So it's an interesting kind of position. It's like, is this an admission of Apple saying we aren't touching AI with a 10-foot pole because we did that and boy, did we put our foot in our mouth? Or is this Apple going, no, let's get back to how we're strong, and how we're strong is we wait until the right time to jump?
Or do they ever jump?
Maybe
was
that
the case with search. Right. So one scenario is that Google can still pay them for search. And one scenario says Google will say, you know what, Apple, we're going to throw in Gemini for free. Go ahead and use it to your heart's content. 20 billion is enough. Or no, Apple pay us another $10 million for Gemini. And Apple succeeded just fine without search. And if AI is the replacement, so do you know, Jason, who's powering the simultaneous translation in the earbuds? Do you know? I didn't see anything on
Oh, that's a good question. I don't know that off the top of my head, but yeah,
it's gotta
clearly
be AI.
it's something. It's, is that just direct from Apple Intelligence? And if so, whose model is that? That's a really great question. I don't know that I've seen the answer to that.
I should have looked that up before we got on. It's powered by Apple Intelligence, so I guess it's theirs. But Siri is a laughingstock. And so I could see Apple saying, we're going to come up with a replacement for the phone. All you guys are playing with the glasses. Wait till you see ours, our real ones, when we really get going here. Wait till you see the device you're going to plant in your head. That's what we are. That's what we make. And this AI stuff right now is a commodity.
I mean, I say their strength is hardware as if their software is not a strength as well. Their software is a strength, but this was a hardware event. And I mean, you see this sort of event from Google and it's hardly about the hardware anymore. Like the Pixel 10 looks, by all accounts, is almost identical to the Pixel 9 by the naked eye, unless you are really clued in on the technology side of things. It's very similar. The big changes and the thing that Google spent 99% of its time talking about were AI features. And, we'll talk a little bit later about how that's not always a success. That's not always a slam dunk. And Apple knows that its hardware prowess is one of its core strengths.
But what's it, if I can jump to this story, the Washington Post did a comparison. The writer, Jeffrey Fowler, spent 2 weeks playing with both the Apple and the Pixel 10. And the difficulty for Apple is that the Pixel has now set a bar that Apple can't even approach, let alone jump over. Because he's saying, oh, well, is it going to help you with these functions? Well, the Pixel can, the Apple can't. So he says the iPhone is as if it's 2 years old. It's missed out. That's a problem for Apple. And so in terms of getting the points he makes is that because of Gemini, the Pixel can get personal. When was my last haircut? It looked at my calendar and told me the answer, says Fowler. On the iPhone, Siri got confused and told me about an appointment coming up. So that Google wins there. Being proactive. On the Pixel, a friend texted me, what time is your dinner tonight? Right in the chat, up popped a little bubble with the details. With one tap, it sent them to my friend. right? That idea that what Google's been doing with all that functionality. 3 is reinventing voice chats. I'm not sure what that really means, but those were 3 areas.
What does that mean? Yeah, curious.
But the point is that I think that Google is now unquestionably ahead of Apple because of AI. So either Apple has something in the works and you think they might have even delayed the product, or they know it's so far behind, or they'll just license Google.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's kind of what I was thinking as I was leading up to this show is, Apple does, as it's easy to see, Apple has ungodly amounts of cash laying around. It could I say very easily solve this problem, but it's obviously not very easy. Otherwise, they would have done it. But they can throw that money in a million different strategies. They could find a company and acquire it. They could invest like Meta is doing in the top AI minds and put them to work. They could do a number of things. But they're choosing at this moment to de-emphasize. And does that actually impact them in the long run? Meanwhile, like you said, you've got Google, leaning hardcore into the AI. And then you have, the Daily Hub, which is a feature that rolled out on the Pixel 10 a couple of weeks ago. Google's pulling it. They say to, kind of tweak it to give it some, to work on its effectiveness and everything. I mean, if I have, in my 2 or 3 weeks with the Pixel 10 so far, if I have one complaint about an app or AI service that Google touted as like, this is amazing, and that I just don't understand, it's this one. So I'm not surprised at all that they pulled it. And these are the kinds of features that we see companies like Google tout as the next big thing. You're going to love it. It's going to tell you so much about you that you didn't already know. It's going to solve your problems way before you even know you have them, blah, 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 blah. And then as a user, you use, and then of course it's run by AI, got to get AI in there 20 times. And then as a user, you end up using it a handful of times, as I did. And every time I'd roll my eyes and be like, this is a joke. Like, this is not useful at all. This is just a bunch of randomness.
How do they dog food that?
Well, yeah, it's a good question. Like, how do you not catch that? Or are you so drunk off your own stash that you're like, oh, it's amazing.
You use all Google features, right? You use Calendar and Gmail and
yes.
And all
that, yeah,
right?
I'm full.
So it's not as if a Google employee uses them and you don't. No, you do too.
Yeah. No, I do too. Yeah, it was a very strange feature. Again, we've talked many times about the system promising to tell you what you need before you know you need it, and that just rarely ever happens to me successfully. And this feature was a prime example of that. It had like a little summary up at the top based on its context of what it knew about you and your day, to kind of give you a short paragraph so that you could read the paragraph. But I found that infinitely difficult because, like, I just want to be able to glance at this thing real quick and go, oh, that's the thing. I don't want to have to sit down and like read through a paragraph in order to, learn the 10 things that I have going today. Just like show them to me.
Right.
And I don't know. So that's a feature that promises so much based on AI, can't quite deliver, kind of similar to what, Apple promised and couldn't deliver. And maybe that's why.
To their credit, they took it down and said, "We'll improve it." And
totally,
it didn't. It because they had enough else. They didn't have a laughing stock around it.
Yeah, totally.
They had a shrug. People said,
It's
a big."
And I think anyone who's using it, probably read that and was like, "Oh yeah, I get it." So it's like, okay,
and the other
cool.
choice was
at least they recognized that and pulled it down.
Yeah. They could have marketed it through it and said, "Oh, you fools, you don't know. This is wonderful."
Right. Just give it time.
Try to convince you.
And the problem is the give it time strategy. I, as a user, will stop using it entirely, and I probably won't give it a second chance.
Yes.
If they pull it and they bring it back later, then maybe I'll retry it again. But if
it's only a few 10 users so far.
Yeah.
They didn't set it out to the rest of Pixeldom.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, Pixel 10s are only just now hitting people, being received by people. So the majority of people who are getting a Pixel 10 will have never even interacted with it whatsoever. Yes. So when it comes back, maybe it's better, and then maybe it does prove itself. But, I'm thinking
of upgrading finally, Jason. Do you recommend I do or not?
I like the Pixel 10. Yeah.
It's a
Do you
phone.
get the Pixel 10 or the Pixel 9? I mean, they're both so similar in a lot of ways. There's certain things that you get on the 10. It's not a bad phone at all. It's what I'm using, and I enjoy it, and I like the pictures that I get and everything. And
Good. I might do it.
yeah, I mean, you're on what? You're on Pixel 6?
Six.
Oh my goodness.
But I'm so happy with it that I haven't felt any need to upgrade.
Yeah. Okay. That's a 5-year-old phone at this point, right?
Yeah. Tell my wife that.
That's amazing. You're proving. What was the Pixel 6 update promise? Let's see here.
I don't
Was
know.
it
That's a good
5
question.
years? Probably would be. Google gives Pixel 6 and 7 2 more years. That was at 2024. So they gave it an additional 2 years. So maybe it was I don't know if it's a total of 5 years. You might be pushing the 5-year limit on that. I'm not sure. I'd have to look it up more, but. Oh, so okay. So Pixel 6 introduced in 2021, guaranteed updates for 3 years, security 4, so 3, 4, 5. So 5 years security
year.
or 5 years of updates.
I'm hitting the end of it. Okay. All right.
Yeah,
that's
you'll
good
be hitting
excuse.
the end in a year. But
I think I'll do it.
hey, it's still rocking for you.
Yeah,
So
it is. It works well.
That's good. Google doing what Google does, and Apple apparently doing what Apple does. Want to throw a huge thank you to our supporters, our Patreon supporters, patreon.com/AI Inside Show. Got a few of you to thank: Ryan Newell, Burke Norton, BTJ, all amazing supporters of everything that we do here on AI Inside. Go to patreon.com/AI Inside Show. Got a number of tiers, one of which is an executive producer level, which, yes, is a higher level, but you get a t-shirt. You get your name every single week thrown out. But everybody gets access to the Discord and so much more. Just go there, patreon.com/AI Inside Show, and check it out. And we thank our supporters for doing that. It's great to have y'all on board. Going to take a quick break, take an ad, and then we'll come back and we'll talk a little bit more about Anthropic, a different type of story about Anthropic coming up in a sec. All right, Anthropic's granting new capabilities to its Claude chatbot, new file creation features. So if you have Claude, I think they kind of all do this to some degree now, and so Claude's a little behind the ball on this at this point, but it lets you generate PDFs out of your output, slides, spreadsheets, docs. If you're a Max team and enterprise user, you can use it. I think now you just have to go into the settings and enable it. Pro users will get it soon. What's interesting is you have to enable this because Anthropic, the AI company that touts its security-minded approach to AI, is explicitly saying that user data, quote, may be at risk. That's their quote, because of the tool's broad file access, because of the analysis. It's possible that there are instructions that are hidden inside of these files that could potentially be used for prompt injection attacks. So if you're including like a source file, I'm trying to understand this. If you're including a source file to your query and it has a prompt hidden in there, I guess they're saying that creating these files with that source could pass the prompt through, or the prompt injection thing through, or I'm not entirely sure how. Like, I don't think that what they're saying is our system could, hack your could create a really insecure output, or maybe they are. I'm not really quite sure.
I'm not sure I understand this either, since I'm not using it for these purposes.
Yeah.
I mean, if you make a PDF is a PDF. That doesn't.
Yeah.
Even though, yes, PostScript is a program, I don't see a problem there. But if you wanted to make a Google Doc or Google Spreadsheet or Google Slides, I guess you have to give it access to your Google account. So they can put it there, point one. Point two, once it has that, is that the vulnerability that has access to your account? Or is it that a macro inside a spreadsheet can do something dastardly? That's what I couldn't figure out because I don't know this stuff well enough.
Yeah, totally. I mean, we're not,
One thing we always do on this show is admit when we don't know something.
We try to, anyways.
We could be wrong and not know we don't know it, but when we know we don't know it, we know it and say it.
Yeah, and if you know it, let us know, and then we'll know it. Contact at AIinside.show. Yeah, it's kind of unclear to me as well. But they were, Anthropic says they're including some mitigations along with that warning. Those mitigations include prompt injection classifier, sandbox isolation. That makes sense to me. Domain whitelists, restricted sharing. But they note that responsibility ultimately falls on the user to protect themselves. And so I think that's, this is part of why this isn't a feature that's just active and running. You kind of have to activate it specifically in settings to turn it on and be okay with it. Because basically by activating, you're saying, okay, I take on the responsibility of whatever may happen. I don't know. It sounds, I don't know that I've noticed other AI companies that do similar things like this touting that, but maybe that's just kind of core to
It
Anthropic's
seems to be
mission.
their culture, yeah, their promise.
Yeah.
I mean, safety, I disagree when the definition of safety is doom, but safety at the level of using this tomorrow and it potentially causing a problem for you if you don't use it right, that's really, really important. And I think that that's their culture is to worry about that. Good.
And then Microsoft, along with this news, I couldn't tell if this is like totally related to, because they are related. Microsoft, is integrating Anthropic's AI models into Office 365 for its doc work, but I don't know if like the docs that the Anthropic system is creating and the Microsoft news are enabled by each other necessarily. But basically Microsoft has said, yes, we are turning slightly away from our what seems to be exclusive relationship with Anthropic to, or sorry, not with Anthropic, with OpenAI,
Right.
to start working with Anthropic tools for this particular aspect of its output. They basically said that Claude's Sonnet 4 outperformed OpenAI in some tasks, things like financial calculations in Excel and PowerPoint designs, that sort of stuff. So, sign of more collaborations to come on the part of Microsoft. Sign of a thawing of Microsoft's relationship with OpenAI.
It could be a negotiating ploy. That's part of it. But I've since, from as far as I can tell, the people I know who like to use these things for coding, Claude is a favored tool for coders. And so Microsoft owning GitHub and having GitHub Copilot, I would think that Anthropic would be a perfect fit there. That's not that's part of this, but they're also, as you said, they're putting it into Office 365 with the other functions as well. But I would think the coding piece would be most valuable to Microsoft.
Yeah,
but I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know either.
Um,
But yeah, exactly. Maybe we need to become vibe coders. I'm a vibe coder. Do you say that when you vibe code? I'm a vibe coder. I'm a vibe developer.
Yeah, somehow it doesn't work at my age.
No, I have a feeling, the majority of people would roll their eyes so hard that you could hear the movement of the eyeball. The GAIN AI Act, for those who don't know, is a piece of proposed U.S. legislation that aims to require U.S. chip makers to prioritize American orders over exports, and Nvidia is apparently not a fan. Doesn't like it at all.
Nvidia has huge markets outside the country, and Nvidia is trying to figure out how to make China a key market, and the HTO chips became a problem, and so on. So they're really kind of caught in a bind here. Though I noticed that Jensen Huang, who I don't think appeared at the Trump White House dinner for the tech.
I didn't see him in any of the photos. Yeah.
However, he is going to go with Trump to London.
Okay.
So he's clearly trying to work the government here. What he's arguing, what Nvidia is arguing, is all of this doom stuff is coming from the left. So they can say to the conservatives, "You don't want to agree with them. You don't want to put these restrictions on. That's just being liberal." And so take these restrictions off because it's going to let business do well.
Interesting. Yeah, I mean, they're throwing. They like you said, they were saying the restrictions caused by AI doomers. That's a quote. Also, a recent statement where they said this was all doomer science fiction. They're really like going hard on the doomer thing.
The doomer thing, really. I have a different definition of doomer. Doomer is the whole we can destroy mankind.
Yeah.
I think what they're talking about is, if you sell to China, that's terrible because China's awful, and we should restrict everything we do because they're a bad government. Which I think they're a bad government. I agree with that part. But as we've discussed on the show, I think by restricting the exports to China, we've only made them catch up and exceed us in some ways. And so it turned out to be a short-sighted strategy. So there I agree with Nvidia.
Yeah, it's just interesting. The use of the term doomer, I realize, is it's another one of those
it's like
emotionally based
yeah.
kind of terminologies. It's like you hear doomer and you immediately go, oh, what doomer? And it has an emotional, visceral reaction when you hear that.
Right.
Nvidia is comparing this to the AI diffusion rule that also restricts export of advanced chips and AI hardware from the US to foreign countries. Both sound very familiar, at least they did to me. So I was like, so what the heck is the difference here? The AI diffusion rule is about distribution, to my mind. In my understanding anyways, the GAIN AI Act is about that, but also about US priority, and expands the rules to any foreign exports, not just those on a restricted list. So it's kind of an expansion, even though they're different things, I guess.
I think it's just Nvidia trying to remind Republicans they're Republicans, and they used to like free trade.
Yeah.
They used to like unfettered business. They used to like not interfering with business. So
who knows who knows who is for what anywhere nowadays. It's so confusing that the lines change all the time.
Yep.
OpenAI shared a new blog post on its site called Why Language Models Hallucinate. And I think more so it's not just why they hallucinate, but why they still hallucinate. These models, are continuing to evolve. Of course, OpenAI released ChatGPT not very long ago. It still is imperfect when it comes to factual data, as they all are. None of them are completely, incorrect. None of them are perfect when it comes to facts. Let's just say that. But this piece states that the main cause has to do with the evaluation methods and how they reward the models for guessing instead of admitting the uncertain nature of their response. That the fact that there are scoreboards right now that grade based on pure accuracy. And it sounds like OpenAI is arguing that these systems should penalize errors that are made confidently more than errors that are made from an uncertain perspective.
Right.
If I'm understanding it correctly. So partial credit, I guess.
Yeah, or punishment.
Okay.
You were a little too cocky there, model.
You knew you got it wrong, and yet you said it anyways. So go to the garage.
Right. And this is part of the sycophantic nature of these things. I want to please you.
Yes.
I'm like a dog. The end. So this is also the blog post is a summary of a paper that they also released. But at the end of the blog post, they summarize the conclusions, and I found this useful for their thinking. And I think what OpenAI, well, I'll get to it in a second. I think what OpenAI is saying here is basically, don't blame us for hallucinations. Some measure of hallucinations will always be there. Not always, not all of them, but some of them. We'll try to make it better, but get used to it. So one claim, hallucinations will be eliminated by improving accuracy because 100% accurate models never hallucinate. Finding, no, we'll never reach 100%. Because regardless of size, search, reasoning capability, some real-world questions are inherently unanswerable. Bit of a dodge. Sometimes it can just be wrong. It was answerable, but you got the answer wrong. Next, hallucinations are inevitable. No, they are not, because large language models can abstain when uncertain. That's the key one. That if it's not certain enough and it says, oh, okay, I'm not going to guess, they think that's going to be the new bar. Not that they're going to have fewer hallucinations, but fewer assertions that they shouldn't make. And more times when it doesn't give you an answer, which I would say is an improvement, but it's not this idea. It's hallucinating, but recognizing it.
Yeah.
Avoiding hallucinations requires a degree of intelligence which is exclusively available in larger models. This is really interesting too, because there's there's an argument about larger and smaller ones, and it says that basically smaller models are easier to deal with this because they know its own limits. Hallucinations are a mysterious glitch in modern language models. No, we understand the statistical mechanisms through which hallucinations arise and are rewarded in evaluations. No, we're saying, well, we got our hands on this. And finally, to measure hallucinations, we just need a good hallucination eval. And they're saying, yeah, we got, however, a good hallucination eval has the effect against hundreds of traditional accuracy-based evals that penalize humility and reward guessing. So they're trying to balance here and figure out where they are. But I think this struck me as a bit of marketing, of them saying, "Oh, we told you we're going to be AGI. We told you we're going to be perfect. We told you we're going to be wonderful. Well, let's redefine intelligence. Let's redefine wonderful." And I think that's what they're trying to do here.
Yeah, what I was thinking is prioritizing humility over accuracy.
Yeah.
Can you be humble? Are you a humble AI?
I mean, we already have this in the terms of Notebook LM. We have it in terms of RAG, because if it's trained properly and it says you didn't give the information to answer that question, so I'm not answering it.
Right. Yeah.
But that's not what models do. Models supposedly have the entire corpus of digital speech in them, and they aren't thus limited, and they inevitably are going to face this as a result.
Yeah, and again, it goes back, for me, it goes back to the question of the understanding of what the technology limits actually are. And on a personal level, I have kind of made my peace with the fact that these things are never going to be perfect, that they're never going to be 100% accurate. I have built into my kind of practices in how I use these models a fact checking or a kind of critical eye or a critical view, or even just a recognition. There are certain patterns that I see that I'm like, okay, I need to go back and double check that, because I'm not 100% certain that what that says is actually the truth, just based on the pattern that put it there. And so as a user, I've taken on more responsibility on how I use these things, from the perspective of there will always probably be, some layer of not truth in the stuff that I'm getting. Do I hold it, like, do I then demonize it because it's not giving me 100% truth? No, I think I've hit a point to where I just kind of accept it for what it is, and I move on. And I don't think there are a lot of people, especially people who don't understand the technology on a deeper level, who get there, who are just automatically kind of linked up with the fact that, like, oh, it's not 100% truth, therefore it's inherently bad.
Yeah, I think we need, and a few weeks ago on the show, I put up a paper that had a taxonomy of hallucinations. And I think it is important to start separating these by type. So I used the various models. I'm writing a book proposal right now about mass media. And one of the things you have to do in a book proposal is say what the comparable books are. And it's always a pain in the ass.
Oh, okay, interesting.
And so I just wanted to get an easy way to find it, because normally I can search on words and see what am I missing, but here I can kind of more search on concepts. What book is about this concept? So I did it, and up came, on each model it gave me a dozen books. Yay! This cuts out an hour of searching around. The first title was complete fiction. It came out of nowhere. It was absolutely made up, and that to me is the most egregious kind. Is when it just completely fictionalizes something just to please me. And that's a problem. Now, obviously, I checked it. I'm not going to put it in a book proposal. I'm going to go look at the book and say, is this an interesting book? Should I know about the book? Should I read the book? So I'm doing that anyway. I'm checking it. But that versus kind of a, no, it was Tuesday versus Wednesday. That taxonomy of error matters, I think.
Yeah. Yeah, indeed.
But then I put a paper in here. Then there's a next level, in which a paper out of Carnegie Mellon
Oh, okay. I was thinking this was because you mentioned the paper. I was thinking this was the
That
paper.
was
But
the other
this is
paper.
a different paper.
OpenAI had its own paper, and then there's
Got
this
it.
paper that said, "Can LLMs lie?" And by the way, the word "lie" is very loaded in journalistic terms these days.
Yes.
Right, and not to get too political, but the signature on Trump's birthday card in the Epstein book, right? The American newspapers are prevaricating like crazy. Well, it can't be fully confirmed. We don't really know. They're deflecting. Da, 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 da. There's Die Zeit in Germany straight out put up a headline: "One lie too many." They use the word lie, right? Then I got into a back and forth with a former copy editor in Facebook. Well, we don't make judgments, and I'm saying, well, that's part of the problem is you do make judgments,
Right.
So in the journalistic sense in the U.S., to use the verb lie implies a motive. That's why hallucination is used, because hallucination is just a boo-boo mistake. But this paper, and I didn't dig into it because it gets beyond me pretty quickly, but it's interesting. They wanted to explore the next level, the phenomenon of an LLM intentionally, even though it doesn't have intent, but lying for a purpose. Is underexplored. We systematically investigate the lying behavior of LLMs, differentiating it from hallucinations, and testing practical scenarios. So they're saying that when an LLM uses the lie as a mechanism to reach a goal, and that's interesting because it goes to the next step. And again, there's no intention of these things, but there is a goal orientation.
Right.
And to separate out hallucinations from lying is a really interesting thing to follow. So that's as far as I'll go with that. But I think it's interesting.
I think there is a distinction and a difference there for sure. Yeah. Interesting stuff. The New York Times has an article that looks at the smartphone as a trend that it says could be sort of passé at this point. Trying to get it on the screen here. It looks at how AI assistants move us beyond kind of where we are with smartphones right now, potentially into new territory. Certainly a topic we've talked about here, nothing completely new, but it does feel like an acknowledgement of where things are headed, right? Apps taking a back seat, AI agents handing tasks off on a more automatic sense, for better or for worse, kind of like what we were talking about earlier with the Google feature, scheduling, note-taking, that sort of stuff. A future focus on devices like smart glasses, like wearables, more ambient computing as a reality out in the real world, not just in our home, which is something that we've been hearing for quite a while, is that your home can be this ambient computing mecca, and everything just kind of works for you. And I think to very mixed results there. But I had a few thoughts on this. First, this idea that we're moving into kind of a realm of a world where everything it has the potential to be audio recorded, right? These little AI pins, our phones recording things. I find myself in conversations, and my desire in these conversations, depending on what we're talking about, is I want to ask permission to record. Can I record this conversation? Because I know I'm going to miss details if I don't have a recording captured of it, and it would be very useful for me to have this later. But it's kind of weird to pose that as a question to someone that I'm just having a conversation with, And we're kind of moving towards a time when potentially this ambient scooping up of recordings of conversations and stuff becomes more normalized, because as people work with these AI systems and AI on our phones and start to understand the benefits of taking a transcript of something and then mining it for all the things that I need to do, or help me analyze this or whatever, the more we think in those terms of, man, it would just be nice to have a recording of everything in my life. Right. And what does that mean for life?
Yeah, and the way they're looking at it, you've got the phone, you potentially have glasses, you potentially have a watch. And which one becomes kind of the headquarter device?
Yeah.
Which one does the thinking? Which one does the communicating? Can you use the glasses without a phone? Could the glasses and the watch be the combination or whatever, right?
Yeah.
And then I think there's a fourth thing they don't mention, which is what people are presuming OpenAI will come out with, which is a fourth device that you just stick in your pocket that does all the computing at least. It is your own little tiny Blackwell chip. And it drives any of those devices, including other devices, right? It could drive a laptop, a tablet, a public screen that you kind of borrow for a few minutes, whatever. And we've talked about this. I called this on the old the old This Week in Google. I think Stacy got tinged with having this, but I think I came up with it. The blob, which was this idea that you had this computing device that could find many outlets. And I think that was even before we thought about AI and everything. It was just a communications thing. But when you get AI in it, you're going to want one. If you really have some super duper AI processing going on locally, you're not going to want to have to buy that 5 times. You're going to want to buy that once. Maybe it's in your phone. Maybe you're always going to have your phone, and that's presumption. But I think it's a different architecture to think about that is interesting. So the Times was kind of obvious in what it was saying.
Yes.
But yes, I think, as you said, but I think there is something in all of these things come together in new ways. And the people who don't wear glasses are left out of some things. There's issues like that about whether you have to have a certain device to do certain things. Speaking of which, did you return the hip white glasses?
No, I kept them.
You kept them? Wow.
Honestly, I ran out of time with my return window. I got COVID, and then I had my trip, and I just ran out of time. And I was like, you know what? Like, I'll figure them out. Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Will I continue to use them for what I originally got them for? Maybe here or there, but I bet if I go to a consumer electronics show or whatever, I bet they
you probably use them. Yeah.
So, yeah, and if I'm not, then I'll sell them, I guess. I don't know. Right now, I haven't decided, but I still have them, and there's no returning them now. So,
yep. Okay. Thanks.
Is what it is. It's not a bad thing. They're not horrible. They just didn't do the thing exactly that I bought them for. But they'll have other uses, I'm sure. And it's interesting to finally have a pair of Meta's glasses.
You can play with them when new things come out.
Yeah, totally. But I think it's interesting to just think of a kind of a world where more of our everyday lives are like, it's one thing to think about like the Google Glass experiment of 10 years ago, where people felt really uncomfortable with someone wearing Google Glass because the minute they walked into a room, they thought they were being video recorded. And that may or may not have been the case. But in some cases it was, in some cases it wasn't. But it was a symbol of like, I'm not ready for random people to just walk in a room and surveil. Like, I just want to live my life. And now we are 10 years later, and this is not quite that, although I guess it could be if people are wearing glasses with cameras and stuff like that. But are we more comfortable as a society working and living in an environment where potentially our audio conversations are recorded? And maybe they're not recorded in a direct sense where it's like, let me play you back what you said the other day, but maybe they're recorded in an AI sense to, similar to like AI training on books. It's like the entire book isn't there, but the understanding of the book is, and this is what it says. And so that I, as a user, as a liver in life, can contextualize my life easier. I'm very forgetful about certain things in my life. It would be really nice to have a device that helps me not forget things, but that comes as the trade-off.
Yes, exactly.
One.
Yep.
Yeah. We have a YouTube channel. If you enjoy watching your podcasts as well as listening to them, if you enjoy looking at me in my garage and Jeff in his, would you call that a den, or is that an office? Or
office,
I guess it would be an office. Yeah. It's more legitimate than a den. Mine is a den.
Where the
It's
magic
also
happens.
a studio.
Podcast.
Where all the magic happens. If you'd like to watch, you can. YouTube, search for AI Inside Show. All of our episodes have a video component. We also do this live for folks on the YouTube channel as well as our socials. So actually, really, it's Jeff's socials more than anything. But follow Jeff on Twitter, and you'll probably see a little live notice when we record our show live every Wednesday, 10 a.m. Pacific, 1 p.m. Eastern. All right, going to take a quick break, and then when we come back, we got a little bit of a speed round, as we have been doing. Lots of interesting stuff coming up. Don't go anywhere. All right, so this first one took me a little by surprise. I didn't see this one coming. Actually, folks in Discord, the AI Inside and Textploder Discord, agreed. This one kind of came out of left field. Atlassian reaching an agreement to acquire the browser company. The browser company is the company that has created the Arc browser, and then more recently the Dia AI kind of driven browser. $610 million cash deal expected to close by December. Atlassian plans to integrate its enterprise tools with these kind of AI driven browser solutions, essentially. So, I haven't used, I'm realizing as I'm talking about this, I really haven't used Arc or Dia. Probably would make sense for me to dip into those just to kind of see what they're all about. Have you used either of them?
No, I haven't. Of course, the main thing we've seen is Comet from Perplexity. And I wonder what you think, Jason. Is browser a future war, or is it completely a past war? We're old enough to remember Microsoft versus Google and all that went around that.
Yeah.
And I understand why Perplexity did what it did. I think it was a shot across Google's bow, which they like to do. And supposedly both OpenAI and Perplexity were looking to maybe buy the browser company. So there's sense out there that there's openness in the browser market, but I don't know. Are browsers the future, or people go away from browsers because they're going to use agents? Are agents browsers?
The idea of an AI browser for me makes a ton of sense, right? Like I spend so much of my time on a laptop doing work, and the majority of that time I am in a browser, and that's how I manage and communicate and navigate and research, and that's how I do so much of my work outside of like the true production stuff that is a separate app. So to that end, it makes a ton of sense to me that they're all chasing this because it delivers on some of the promises or the ideas that have come for many years of taking the browser that we already use and making it more useful, integrating with the apps. And I think in the past that's been done with extensions, and that carried its own risks and complications and headaches and everything. But with a browser that has the AI integrated into it, I mean, I've noticed firsthand with Comet that it helps me in certain situations. I definitely move quicker because I don't have to like interpret or copy paste or anything. It's just like what you see here, tell me this, or what you see here along with what you see in the other tabs, tell me this about them all. What do they share? What's different? That sort of stuff. So it's very, very useful, and I can see that as being a valuable war to be fought, and someone's going to win there. I think my bigger question is, so then step out of that, a wider scope, does it make more sense for the operating system to be the agent? Because then it encompasses the browser and everything else. And that also requires a heavy level of comfort on the user side of things. And as we've seen with Microsoft and Recall and them trying to do this, users aren't always just all in on just handing over the keys and saying, contextualize everything I do on my computer.
Well, it's the irony of my problems with Google Workspace, because I want to work on that. I want Gemini to be part of, it's still not part of my browser. And I want to be able to do what you can do in Comet and say, look at my tabs and do this.
Yep.
It doesn't do that. It does. It is in there in Drive. It is in there in Gmail and the applications. But I think you're right, Jason. I think it's a really good way to look at it, is agent as OS. Then you give it permission. You ask it to do certain things with certain applications that you then have, as opposed to new AI applications.
Right.
Different architecture.
Yeah, different.
Interesting.
But I mean, is a browser agent more adept at doing browser agent things versus an OS agent that also works with whatever browser you happen to be using? That I don't know. I think there's a lot to iron out there for an OS level agent to be as effective as, say, a company releasing a browser with its agent built into it and really highly customized for that specific use case, you know?
Well, Dr. Android, I think we're both talking laptop as a surface here, but if you go to the phone,
Yeah.
isn't the stuff that 10 promises to do in terms of making up answers for you and anticipating your answers, isn't that kind of AI built into Android at that point?
Yeah, totally. I mean, yes, AI is definitely built in on the operating system layer on Android, or at least on Google's Pixel OS, you know.
Yeah.
It's for sure baked into there. Um, but yeah, that's a really good point. It's different on desktop than it is on mobile, and is that just because mobile is a lot more controllable because it's a smaller kind of sandbox to play with versus
Oh.
the wide-reaching, vast, unlimited landscape of a desktop or a laptop or whatever? And how effective is it? You know, there's certainly those AI features littered throughout the Pixel version of Android, and I think that's their goal, is to contextualize all the different things you're using, and they do little pieces of that, but it's not full, it's not comprehensive yet, and it's not ambient. It's not just like taking it all in as you go. You kind of still have to remember to launch it or remember
Yes.
to
Yeah.
reach
Okay,
out to
right,
it,
right.
you know. So yeah, it's a little different there. I didn't really want to put this in, so I put it in the briefs. In D.C., Melania Trump led a White House event where she stressed the need for AI literacy at a young age. Administration is pushing policies to integrate AI into the classroom, which I don't think is a bad thing necessarily. I think that, you know, our students and our kids probably should be. We should start looking at ways to get them familiar with, at the very least, comfortable with, maybe at the most, but not handing over the keys entirely. I don't know. I'm very mixed on this one, but she's, you know, challenging the students and teachers in education in the U.S. to work on their comfort level and increase their comfort level with AI. And I guess, yeah, she got some people together to do that.
Yeah. I don't know what Melania knows about AI.
I don't either.
So I kind of leave that aside.
Yeah.
And I think robots is more a descriptive
Yeah.
word than real.
I see the robots are here, and I think, okay, then you don't understand.
Right,
That's my
exactly.
immediate reaction. Is if you're saying, when you're talking about AI, the robots are here and it's time to hand over the keys, then I don't think you
don't know
truly
what's yeah.
understand where we're at with AI right now. But
Yeah,
maybe I'm
and the
wrong.
poor kids are being shuffled from. On the one hand, you've got to learn the future, and the future's AI. On the other hand, oh my God, you're a screw up if you use AI, and we're going to come get you.
Yeah. And on the other hand, you have no future because AI is going to do all the jobs. And what
Bingo.
are you going to do?
And by the way, why do you have your phone? That's now
Yeah.
forbidden because that's corrupted you and make you awful. I mean,
Yeah.
geez, can we have a little respect for our own young people because they're going to take over the world from us,
Yes.
and that drives me nutty.
Yeah, indeed. I totally agree. A separate White House dinner. I think these were two different things, right? But they
Yes,
happened
they were.
right around the same time. White House dinner brought some of the biggest names in technology to the table. Just how things have changed in a short year. Topics included U.S. innovation, efforts to increase chip manufacturing and AI, kind of like what we discussed earlier. But you had Tim Cook, Sam Altman, Sundar Pichai, Zuckerberg, Bill Gates, just to name a few, at that delightful table in Washington, D.C. I don't know what else
Yep.
to say about that. That happened.
They all had to suck up.
Yeah, it felt a little, to me, like kissing the brass ring.
Yes.
Because whether they agree with where things are at or not, they have shareholders to appease, they have a business to run, and in some ways they have a lot to gain if they do.
Right.
So yeah, for better or for worse, I guess. OpenAI is apparently getting in on the motion picture industry with an animated feature called Critters, set to premiere at the Cannes Film Festival in 2026, so next year. reportedly has a budget of around $30 million, which might sound like a lot, but really in the world of animated feature films is a pretty small amount. I think often, they're in the range of like $200 to $300 million. So this promise of AI tools lowering the cost and increasing the time, this is a short production time, less than a year. These animated feature films often take 2 to 3 years as well. They take a long time to create. So yeah, I'll be curious. I don't know. Could be a big moment for Gen AI tools and film. I'm not sure. Will you be rushing to the theater to see it?
No.
No. Okay.
I don't know if I'll rush to the theater.
Yeah, the theaters might not even be there anymore. You just don't know. And let's see here. No,
it's
not
almost finally, but I just put a story in.
Oh, what did you put in?
A little breaking news.
Okay.
Why don't you do? Okay, well, then we'll end with the funny story. So, OpenAI and Oracle just signed a $300 billion computing deal.
OpenAI and Oracle.
So
okay.
This is OpenAI, which of course was tied at the hip supposedly to Microsoft. Microsoft is saying, "Well, we're gonna do a dance with Anthropic here," and then OpenAI says, "Well, we're gonna do a major. We're gonna move in with." Did I put up the wrong link? Right.
Go ahead and do this. Okay, there we go.
So they're buying $300 billion of compute. OpenAI is from Oracle.
$300 billion. My goodness, the amount of money that's thrown around here. Wow.
So that throws in. There's another story in the journal that says that Larry Ellison, now father-in-law to CBS, since his son bought it, is rivaling Musk as the world's richest person. So Ellison, who's a character, is just kind of popping out all over here.
Wow.
And Oracle shares surged 42% on Wednesday.
Dang.
After the cloud company revealed it added $317 billion in future contract revenue. So Oracle kind of comes out of nowhere in the AI race.
No kidding. Not used to talking about Oracle on this show.
Exactly. Now I got to start looking them up.
Now we got to start paying attention.
And finally, as a lighter note.
Yeah, I mean, we have, actually, I realized that I've got a couple of stories here. So we've got VO3.
Oh, sorry.
And VO3 Fast. Yeah, and basically the news here, cheaper. Pricing has dropped from 75 cents to 40 cents per second for VO3, 40 cents to 15 cents per second for VO3 Fast. Supporting 9:16 vertical video, also 1080p HD output. So VO3 is the video generation that has really put Google in the spotlight when it comes to these services. Google's output on this is really interesting. It also generates sound, all that kind of stuff. But Google Photos is getting VO3 as well. You will not get the sound generation here. But what it allows you to do, which you could do before, you could go into your Google Photos library and animate a picture from your library, which is just a really weird thing to do because we know the people in our photos more than anything and anyone. And then to see it animated, you see the little inconsistencies and everything. It really stands out. But anyways, they're upgrading that to VO3 and no sound generation in that because, you probably wouldn't sound much like yourself if VO guessed what you sounded like. So that's neat. And then finally, yes, we have to end with Godfather of AI, Geoffrey Hinton, who got dumped by his girlfriend by way of an AI chatbot.
Isn't it perfect? Isn't it great?
What a sign of the times. He told the Financial Times about the incident. He said, quote, "She got the chatbot to explain how awful my behavior was and gave it to me. I didn't think I'd been a rat, so it didn't make me feel too bad. I met somebody I liked more. You know how it goes." He's playing the field, apparently.
It's great.
Who knew? What this reminded me of, which maybe it reminded you of this, Jeff, is Phil Collins, who, maybe is off the hook now for dumping his wife of 10 years by fax machine.
Yeah.
That's an old reference, I realize.
Right.
Maybe some of the listeners don't even know what a fax machine is. But
or Phil Collins.
Yeah, that's right. Or Phil Collins. That's true. Probably more likely that. All right. Well, we've reached the end of this episode. Lots of news, lots of fun stuff to talk about, and there will continue to be more stuff to talk about each and every week on AI Inside. Jeff Jarvis, thank you so much for doing this show with me each and every week.
Always,
I really enjoyed doing it.
I learned so much.
Always learn so much. JeffJarvis.com is where you can go. I'm fighting to put it up on the screen right now. JeffJarvis.com for Gutenberg parenthesis. You can order that. Also an audiobook. Magazine, also an audiobook. The Web We Weave.
Not an audiobook.
Not an audiobook.
No.
Needs to be an audiobook.
Well, that's all.
Maybe someday an audiobook. But for now, you're going to have to use your eyeballs to read it.
Old-fashioned, yeah.
And that's okay because it's a really great book. Thank you, Jeff. So great to do this with you each and every week. AIinside.show is the website for all of our stuff. You can find out everything you need to know about us. You can leave us a review and it'll appear on this little carousel. Go ahead. You know you want to. Everything can be found there, including ways to subscribe. And then, of course, patreon.com/AI Inside Show for our most ardent supporters. You can go there and support us like our executive producers do. Dr. Do, Jeffrey Maricini, Radio Asheville 103.7, Dante St. James, Bono De Rick, Jason Knifer, Jason Brady, Anthony Downs, and Mark Starcher. Thank you all so much. Maybe someday I'll run your names through like a Udio or a Suno thing, and we'll come up with a song for the end. And most people will tune out because they're like, we don't listen to that crap. But there you go. It's what we got here is just a bunch of AI crap. Thank you so much for watching and listening. We appreciate you. We'll see you next time on another episode of AI Inside. Take care, everybody. Bye.